Let's take a look now at the competitive challenges that face HRM. There's a lot of them out there. There's a whole series of different organizational structures where people are coming out saying, this is the new way of doing. Here's one of those. The environment, social, and governance practices. Yes, we have to deal with all of them. Actually, it's much bigger than just here. Typically, you're looking at now on the international basis, what we call the triple bottom line, which is really economic, environmental, and social, those three. Here we toss in governance because this is more of a specialty within human resources itself. But you're looking at an increase of concern about the environment to the point that people are looking at that as to how they invest stock as they go through, and also how people sit down and pay attention to the company they want to work for. Some of them, this is such a big enough issue that if they don't do good recycling, if they don't sit down and do long-term sustained energy, if there's not a plan in place that will be all self-power without depending upon outside sources, that will sit down and not work for them. Seriously, and those are things that you in human resources need to pay attention to. If you're going to rise in management, listen to those voices because they're out there on every single aspect. The social part of it really comes down to corporate social responsibility. We're looking at people tend to be drawn to companies now that have some type of thing. They want to be able to sit down and say, yes, I work for so-and-so and we do this over here. If you go to even like Google, they'll sit down and give you up to 10% release time, even 20% release time a week to work on community projects as you go through. Forget about the fact they make you work 60 hours a week. Anyway, but that being said, by the time you're all done looking at that, really we're paying more attention today than ever before to the aspects, not just of the economic bottom line, but to the environmental and the social bottom line as you go through. The governance practices is how much you're listening to the people on the inside as you go through, as well as the stakeholders' needs. And recall, a stakeholder is not about eating meat. It really is about who has a stake in the company and something that they're really involved in, and who the company has an impact on as you go through. Sustainability needs to be paid attention to on a strategic basis, and people will be drawn more and more as that is a criteria to work within the organization as you go through. Some of the challenges as you go through, you're competing a lot on globalization as you go through. Globalization, you're looking across the entire planet. So you're looking at recruiting people, not just in the United States, but you're looking at people, recruiting people, sometimes even working through third-party vendors in India, in China, in Sri Lanka, in Cambodia, in Vietnam. You're looking at European as well as you go through. You're looking at the Eastern European as well, looking for sources to hire people at a good rate with high skills as you go through. And a lot of those skills are not just technical, but they're soft skills to get along with people. By the way, also technology plays a major role within an organization. Let me give you something that you're not going to hear about unless people actually have experience doing it. One of the stealth ways you bring change into an organization is through technology. Just so you know, higher education is loaded with all kinds of political dynamics about this and about that. And everything's a political issue, actually much more so than in the private sector. In the private sector, it comes down, this is how it's going to be. In higher education, everybody argues about everything because you got professors that talk a lot. Not me, of course, other people. Yeah, that's them. Okay, but that being said, when you bring in technology, everybody kind of never argues with that. They always sit down and says, well, we got to do it because really that's the way it's set up already. And everybody kind of goes along with it and there's no pushback on it because, well, we got to keep up with technology. So just in case you want to become a chief executive officer, a chief human resources, a chief business officer, whatever chief position you want to pursue, technology is a stealth change agent. So put that in your notes, put it in the back of your head too. That's one of those practical things you can take away from this class into the real world as you go out there. And also look at the ESG, the ESG, environmental. You have a whole shopping list of different things out there that you too can sit down there and pay attention to within your organization. A lot of the workforce and employment implications really that skill demand for jobs have changed. A lot of them are really now, we're mechanizing or going with AIs on a lot of the different administrative functions, especially in the HR, and we're paying more attention to the people, looking for wages, benefits, that aspect as you go through. And especially now, we have a lot more people working from home. How can we sit down there and have an environment for them? Sometimes a remote place as you go through, but also in the home environment, how do you sit down and provide support to those employees that are staying home on a more regular basis? Companies have to pay a lot more attention to HR practices that really influence your ability to attract other people as you go through. If you look on the overall labor force, we have a couple of issues that happen. In 2021, we had a full 38 million people in the United States resign their job. And that's having a huge impact as you go through. We're going to have a lot more third-party vendors out there as that massive chunk of our workforce is out there and they're looking to start their businesses of their own. You're going to have a lot more talent, a lot more inexpensively than ever before as a third-party vendor. You in human resources need to pay attention for an opportunity to enhance your bottom line by getting some super sharp employees on a short-term basis without paying benefits. Benefits can cost you 24% of the actual salary. In other words, if you're paying somebody $100,000 a year, the cash money and their salary, you're going to probably pay at least another $24,000 in benefits, maybe $30,000. So the actual cost that you're going to have for the $100,000 employee isn't just in the cash compensation. It's about $130,000 to $135,000 for all the benefits you provide. If you can sit down there and tap into some of those third-party vendors that are now out there, man, you can sit down and really help your bottom line by avoiding having to pay all those additional benefits by outsourcing different aspects of it. If you look on the chart over here, the second bullet point really helps you look as to exactly what are we doing in our country as you go through. 81% of everybody in the United States is employed in some type of service providing industry. And then you see the breakdown of the other around 20% as you go through. You really only have about 12% involved really in the aspect of industries in construction and manufacturing. And if you look at that, there's also a big agricultural component as you go in the process out there. So you have a lot of them as you're going through. You're looking here also at projection from the Department of Labor saying that in 2026, there's going to be 46 million plus job openings are expected as you go through. You're going to see the average age of the workforce rising up to 42.3 years. You're also going to see a couple things by 2026. You're going to have a large number of the baby boomers moving off of the job market. You're going to have the Gen X and the Gen Z and the millennials all in there being the primary ones, but you'll also be having the newer generation, those people that are born from 2010 on. And right now we're calling them Generation Alpha. Who knows what the end name is going to be, but you're looking at them about 2010 on. You're going to be looking at them beginning to enter the job market in numbers as you go through from 2026 to 2030. We're always going to have about 4 generations in our workplace nowadays. In some cases, you're going to have people like Warren Buffett. Good night, that guy, he must have plutonium running his heart or whatever. The guy's in his 90s and he's still sharp as a tack as you go through, and he's running one of the most dynamic businesses on planet Earth. Oh, and by the way, Charlie Unger, right now, he's in his 90s as well, and they've been business partners for a long time. The two of them, who knows, by time 10 years go by 2030, they could still be operating at 110 as far as I'm concerned. They still have fire in their belly and still love working on a regular basis as you go through. We're looking at 4 generations continually being in the workplace in some way, shape, or form, no matter what happens. But we're also going to look at a contingent of a lot more people available for third-party consulting, and you can sit down there and enhance the bottom line of the corporation if you pay attention as you go through. If you look overall, let's continue looking at the labor force. Diversity is increasing, especially among the Latinx as you go through. If you look on the different aspects of it, you're looking at the Caucasian population at the time of this recording is just about the majority of the population. You see the Latinx population really increasing dramatically as you go through. If you look on the current projections from really the federal government, you're looking at the African American and the Black population really stabilizing about 13% where it is today. It's not looked to project much different in the year 2050, as well as the Asian American population, which is about 9% as you go through. through. The biggest change that we're going to see is the Latinx population dramatically expanding population-wise as you go through. As of this recording, I'm in California, and actually, they're even in most places of California with Latinx and Caucasians as you go through, but in a lot of places, you actually have a larger population in different segments of California of Latinx. So really, they're coming. And by the way, you need to pay attention in human resources. What does that mean to your company? Do you have people that are bilingual, that speak English and Spanish? You better pay attention to that, because that is a future opportunity for your company to sit down there and expand by making certain you're paying close attention to the population shift and that population growth in that specialty area as you go through. Pay attention to diversity. And I know it's nice to talk about it politically, but the other part of this, talk about it economically. How does it enhance your bottom line as you go through? Education is important to meet a lot of job requirements, but a lot of times we're looking at, do you need a college education for that, or can a certificate help? Pay attention to that. I know I'm a college professor, but at the end of the day, you're looking for people that have technical skills that can do that. But pay attention to the other part. There's a lot of people that have a lot of skill and have really poor soft skills. That's why HR is becoming bigger and bigger, not because of the fact that we're so important. It's because so many people don't pay attention to sexual harassment and other issues we'll be talking about later on. Those soft skills are a big deal, which is why it's critical that really a college education does help you develop additional skills beyond a special expertise as you go through. STEM is a big, big deal as you go through in the process. So if you're looking at that, the STEM skills are enormous as you go through the process as you go through. Now, pay attention to the different kinds of assets you're going to have, because I highlighted one really big in bold letters at the bottom. You always have cash securities and the financial assets. You'll have the physical assets of it, which is really kind of interesting. Should you be building more new buildings when a lot of stuff is available that's vacant today, that's leasable, or people will want to work from home? Pay attention to that aspect of it. But you also have a big thing called the intangible assets. And you have them, normally we talk about intangible assets on a corporate basis to be trademarks and copyrights as you go through and those things. But that being said, really you have human capital, customer capital, social capital, and intellectual capital. There's more to it than just that. Sometimes there are people that are superstars in a specific industry and you want to get them in your company because a person can make a difference. And by the way, they can make a difference for good. They can also make a difference for bad as well as in the process. That's where you come in human resources. There's an old saying, and the reason it's an old saying and still said to this day is because there's a lot of truth to it. One bad apple can spoil the whole bunch. Part of HR is to work with supervisors to get rid of those bad apples, so to speak, wherever they be, or try to rehabilitate them into being good employees in the process. Usually, a lot of that really comes down to the social skills need to be better developed, and that's where the soft skills come in as you go through. The human capital aspect, if you can sit down and save an employee as you're going through and go through a training program rather than termination, there's a lot of merit to it. Part of it is because you as a human being need to get the respect of the other person, but the other part is just the economic cost of replacement can be very difficult. So work with them in development. And I've had numerous cases where I had mediocre to poor employees step up the game and know they may never be an A-list employee, but they could end up being a good, solid B-list employee from a C or a D to that level as you go through. So pay attention to the intangible assets as you go through. Here they are in a much deeper base as you go through. Look on the social capital, corporate culture. That comes from the top of the organization. It doesn't filter up from the bottom. If you have somebody that is unethical at the top of the organization, no matter what happens, the people down here that are ethical are not going to make that thing pure and better in the process and bring more ethics. No, that unethical culture is going to filter down deeper and deeper in the organization. And sometimes it takes root and it stays there. And to make corporate change, pay attention to this word, 3 to 9 years to create solid, long-lasting, sustained corporate change. This whole thing of a change agent coming in and says, I'm going to make this big change in a couple of years. It ain't happening. The data never shows that whatsoever. Usually your change agents come in, they have these changes that are that deep. As soon as that person leaves, it doesn't make any change. If you want to sit down and have corporate change, it takes a long time for it to be driven throughout the whole culture of the organization. You need to make certain your leadership really reflects the values that your corporation wants to go through. So pay attention to the corporate culture, the philosophy, the practices, the informal networking as you go through, and have coaching, mentoring as you go through. If you get those 5 things rolling along very well, you can make change happen in a positive way throughout the organization, but you have to be consistent and you have to stay on message as you go through in the process. Intellectual, patents, copyrights, trade secrets, intellectual property, that is normally what we teach all the time in business. The social capital is more the human part. Oh, wait a minute, we're called human resources as you go through. The human capital, a lot of times there are people out there that are superstars on the technology and they have knowledge and they get things just like that as you go through. Education really helps them as well, especially with the soft skills, the work-related know-how, and the competencies as well. And sometimes you have customers you really want to court, you want to go after them. So developing a long-term relationship with a good customer as you go through, and the brands and the loyalty you have with them, and making certain you have a solid distribution channel, they play a big role. Now, if I was teaching marketing, we'd be talking about the customer aspect of it. And normally you have about 4 different levels of customers. You got the A customer who really, they're good to work with, they're positive, and you like them as you go through. You have the B customer who accept your services and they accept them without too much complaining. Then sometimes you got the C customers who complain at just about everything and they want special catering as you go through. And then you have the D customer who cause you nothing but headaches. Sometimes you got to pay attention to, do you want to sit down and spend all the time with the C's and D's, or do you want to spend it with the A and B people as you go through? Customer capital is a big deal, but let's go on as we go through. Knowledge workers, a lot of times you hire a person and all of a sudden you got this fountain of knowledge within them and they just have that knack for digging and finding the information you need. They sit down there and help you build your company as you go through. For those people in HR, sometimes you hire a special headhunter to go after a person as you go through, somebody that you want in the marketplace. But be careful, sometimes if you pay too much attention to them, their egos become bigger than the doorway and they have a hard time getting into your company as you go through. Here's something that I really want to emphasize to you, because by the way, it's going to probably show up in a test. The other part of it is a thing called a learning organization. What is that? Oh, it's kind of like you're coming to college, you're taking a college class to learn about something. And you as a student, part of your job, because you are a student, is then continually enhance the level of learning that you have to better your knowledge base, to better your skill set, to better your academic skills, but especially prepare you for that world outside. An organization should be doing that on a regular basis. In my opinion, a minimum that every company should be having is a minimum of 20 hours of required training, staff development activities, a minimum. I think it should be higher. And on top of that, I think a minimum of those 20 hours should at least be 6 hours in technology, because it's changing so fast. Those are minimums. My recommendation is actually higher. I think we should spend a lot more time on it, but we need to be an organization that learns as you go through. And here's the problem. If you don't, and somebody else does, they may eat your lunch and you'll be out in the street looking for a job at their place as you go through. So pay attention, because this is about bottom line, and this is what HR really is about. Adapting to change. Change is going to happen. It's inevitable. And somebody once said, change or die. As much as it sounds really crude, rude, and upsetting, it's really true, because change is going to happen. So pay attention to that. And yes, employees, you want to encourage them to take more responsibility for their career pathways, but you need to be able to open channels up as you go through the process. Challenge to build committed, productive workforce, give incentives to them to go off on different things. If it's a matter of a location, consider doing that, or some type of a special programs. You want to manage, you want your employees to be agile as they go through. We're going to talk later on about management styles, about theory X and theory Y a little bit, but this class is really about HR practices. But let me tell you, if you're working with a theory X person that doesn't trust the employees, thinks they're all trying to cheat the company and everything else, those are not fun people to work for, and they're going to be a detriment to sit down and change as you go through. If you have a supervisor that builds trust and accountability, that's the other part. A lot of them are laissez-faire, don't pay attention, and they think that's building trust. It's not. hold them accountable, but give them the freedom to be successful on their job, you can have a very adaptive organization as you go through. So sustainability, globalization, and technology are really challenges for you in human resources. Make certain HRM works to help develop a learning organization and really shift when you have to deal with the work and personnel needs, and always pay attention to the intangibles. You in human resources must pay attention to human capital, which is what you're involved with on a regular basis, and the social part of it. It really is normally the customer part and the intellectual part. They're different parts as you go through, and the intellectual capital really needs to become an organization asset as you go through. Take care.